Hello, everyone. My name is David Chesnut. I'm the host for the call today. This is the Microsoft Office Add-ins Community Call. Welcome to the call. Let's take a look at the agenda and our presenters for today. Joining us today is Raymond Liu, who's going to talk about some updates to the Add from Base64 API. Also joining us is Nisarg Kinariwala, who's going to talk about the Office Add-in Usage Report. And then I will be doing a demo of a new patterns and practices sample we have for web workers for Excel custom functions. And then as usual, we have our Q&A at the end. As per all of our calls, if you have any questions as we go along, just post them into the chat and we'll answer those questions as we go through the call. If there's any questions we're unable to get to, we post a blog summary a few days after the call and we'll be sure we get the answers there if we didn't get to them today. And also just a reminder, please keep mics muted so that the presenters don't have any distractions as we go along. So let's go ahead and jump into our first item, which is Add from Base64. So Raymond, do you want to take over the presentation?
Yes, let me share my screen. Today, I would like to introduce one of the top requests from our user Void, which is the Add from Base64 API update. So this API has been in preview for a few years, and we're glad that in the past few quarters we have done some investigation and also invest on this area, and is almost there. But we would like to ask your help to do some validation once we have put in the preview. So today I would like to show you some update on this. About the first one is the design improvements, and this API we have improved three areas. First is the name change. We learned that Add from Base64, we changed it to insert worksheet from Base64. The reason is insert may tells you that you can insert any position you like, but add is more like you added at the end of this workbook. Another thing is the discoverability improvements. Before, we called them the Add from Base64 under workbook and worksheets collection. But now we feel that it's better to put it under workbook. So you can use the workbook.insert worksheets from Base64 to get that API to use that directly. And besides that, we also improved the parameter. So you can see that some of the parameters are optional, but you can put a none there. If the case that we put too many none and we care about the last parameter, it looks not easy to read. Therefore, we make it a optional options. So you can use this to put your information and then make it easier. So paste a string and then option. Okay. And here's a sample code. Let me introduce a little bit on this. And this is under a workbook. You can use that. The workbook string, which is the Base64 string. The option here we have three options. Which sheet name you want to insert. Here, example, I want to care about sheet 1. I put the sheet 1. You also can add multiple sheets. If you keep none, it will insert everything of that workbook. For position type, you can put where of this position be. It can be begin. It can be end of this workbook, or you can do before which specific worksheets. So you can put this worksheet in before sheet 2 or after sheet 2. So this is option that we use. Okay, so now I would like to give you a demo for this API. So this actually is a dev environment, so it's not yet ready for the preview, but will be very soon. So let me show you my first code. The code is very simple, like what I described. So first, this is actually two parameters. One is the Base64 string, and the second one is the option. So option is an optional, so I can ignore that. Therefore, it can insert everything. Let me try it. So this example is to show you there's two steps. So first, I need to select a workbook. So for example, I select the workbook here, Mars FHL. So I click OK, open, and then this workbook will be converted to the base64 string, and then I can use this API, which I demo you the sample code. It can insert everything of this workbook. Let me show you what is this workbook looks like. It's over here. Yeah, it's just like this. I have a 2 sheet. One sheet is application form, another one is the results. Okay, so let's see how it works. If I click insert, yeah, just wait for yeah, so it will insert. Okay, so you can see that these 2 sheets are successful insert to my workbook. Yeah, this is the things that we already here. Okay, so I ignore the option, but also I can put the option here if I customize this option. So I want to insert the next workbook. For example, I want to insert this workbook. Let me show you real quick. So this is what I'm targeting work I would like to insert. There is a 2 sheet. So I would like to insert first one, sheet name. So I put the name here, and then I want to relevant to, for example, relevant to this, and I want to insert, say, after this. Okay, and let me show. So they will insert only one worksheet, and this worksheet will be positioned between. Okay, it will convert it to the base64 string, and then I click this button, it will call this API to insert. Yeah, it's correctly put it here. Yeah, this is the exactly same worksheet that you have seen here. Yeah. So this is the capability to insert base64 in Excel Online, but also due to the fact that we are using the copy paste feature, so there's some of the limitation. So I'd like to demo you another limitation that we have in our solution, which is this workbook. This workbook has a charts. So far, the copy and paste doesn't support charts, so it will not success. I will show you the unsuccessful experience. So if I click here and I insert here, and then it will convert to the base64 string, and then I click insert sheet, it will tell you that there's so this arrow type, this arrow actually, we have a new error message to tell you that this is unsupported features. So it will show you what is the feature that is unsupported. So you will need to do some customization on this workbook. Okay, so go back to my presentation. So I would like to share some important notice of this API, because insert from base64 is actually leverage move and copy feature. So in Win32, you can use that. You will right click your sheet. You can have this menu, and you click this menu. You'll be able to move your sheet or copy your sheet to another workbook. However, right now, the Excel Online do not support this feature. That's the reason that this API are high demanded, but will not be able to release because of Excel Online is not yet support. Therefore, our team are doing some investment to leverage the copy and paste. So if you Control C and then Control V, the feature, and then it will copy the source workbook to the target workbook, source worksheet to the target worksheet. So, however, copy and paste in Excel Online has some limitation because of some of the elements not be able to copy, like for example, chart, pivot table, comments, and slicers, and those one are not be able to copy. This is a known gap. And beside that, we also learned that there's some external link. For example, if you are referenced to another workbook, then this one will not be able to copy correctly. And beside that, we also learned that name range and structure reference in the formula is also not supported in the copy paste feature. Therefore, if you have this information, might not copy correctly. Therefore, you might need to pay attention to the source data information and avoid using this if you are using insert from base64 API. So we would like to ask your help to support us to do some analysis of your workbook that you would like to insert from using these APIs to insert to your workbook to understand what's the priority of the feature gap. Therefore, we can ask the copy and the paste feature team to prioritize on that feature gap. So the action we'd like to call for today is that it would be great. We learned that this is a high demand API that a lot of customers are requesting for it. So it would be great that you can send us your sample workbook. Therefore, we can do some analysis and to understand what are the content of your workbook you would like to copy. Therefore, we could understand what is important for us to do the prioritization for the gaps. And that is the Adform64 API introduction, the status. And we will likely to provide a preview version in January. And then after in January, then and you can do validation and provide us your feedback. So together with insert from base64, we have other candidates for 1.13. And the range, we have get direct precedence API. It can get the precedence cells of this range. And also, this is also very high demanded API, which is merge area. And then the get range edge and extended range, and also be able to support table resize. And we have a bunch of API related to pivot layout. Besides that, we have two group of events. One is related to the workbook on activated. Another one is worksheet on formula change events. So if you have requests or you have asked for the API, please do let us know. Okay, I think that's all for my side. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Raymond. It's really great to see that coming along. So switching over to Office add-in usage reports with Nisarg. Nisarg, do you want to take over the presentation?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, David. Hello, everyone. I am Nisarg Kinariwala, and I'm a program manager in Office Platform team. Before I start, I would like to thank all of you for developing all the awesome applications on our Office ecosystem to empower our customers to achieve more. I'm here today to talk about the add-in usage data that we provide on Microsoft Partner Center, which you can leverage on to get meaningful insight and try to improve your product over the time. So as you build these add-ins on Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and other applications, oftentimes you might be interested to see like what's the usage of your add-in looks like, how many customers that you attract on daily basis over the time. Apart from that, you also might be interested to see like what's the stickiness of a user, meaning within one period of time, the number of users who use your application, out of them, how many of them come back in the next interval and in further intervals as well. So what's your retention story looks like, and based on that, probably you can learn and you can try to add more features to your product and make it more powerful. Other than that, you also might be interested to see like what's your geographical footprint. So in which regions your add-in is more popular, and where are the opportunities for you to grow and expand. So these are like some of the basic and interesting questions that all add-in developers might be having, and the answer resides in Microsoft Partner Center. So Probably some of you might have already seen that, but yeah, it's a right now it's a good forum to get a look at it, and then I can provide some of the logistic information those you are not aware of. So as you can see here, this is the sneak peek of Microsoft Partner Center. So once you log in the left pane, you would see Office Store, and under Analyze, you will see a usage tab. So when you click on it, you will be able to see the data that Microsoft is providing on Microsoft Partner Center in the most compliant manner. So this is the sample data that I am showing you right now. But in the top section, you'll be able to see like what's the daily active usage of your add-in looks like. And you can go up to 90 days. So that's the maximum data that we are exposing on Partner Center. And apart from that, you will also be able to know like how many new users you are attracting on daily basis. So the red line that you see here, that's a trend line of the daily new users, and the blue line is all the users, including the new users. So for this specific example that you see some dips, which is basically showing the impact of weekend. Down below, we have this green color grid. That's the retention which I was talking about. So in this specific example, you can see like in the week of September 14th, there were around 12,000 users who tried to launch this specific add-in. Out of these 12,000 users, 15% did come back in the subsequent week. And out of 12,000, 9% came back in the week 7. So the 7-week window is the maximum window that we are showing in terms of retention. So this way you can like measure like approximately what's your retention story, how many customers you can retain, and for how long. And based on that, you can take some smart decisions to improve your product. And the third piece that we have is the geographical map view. So here, the darker the blue shade, meaning more customers that you have from that region. And you have an option to choose between map and table view. So for this specific example, as you can see here, it's like this particular add-in is very popular in Japan, Germany, US. And apart from these main 3 pivots, we also have some filter capability. So you can slice everything, all your usage and retention for a specific region or specific Office applications. Sometimes you have the same add-in which is available on Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And if you're interested to filter only for Excel, you can certainly do it here. You can also slice your data by different platforms. So this is the good way to understand the overall footprint of your add-in. A couple of callouts. So the data that we are exposing here is it with 4 days latency, meaning today is December 9th. So you should be able to see the data until December 5th. Second thing is sometimes you might be the owner of multiple add-ins. And in that case, what will happen is in this interface, in the top left corner, you would see a drop down. So you can choose a different add-in. And then you can see the usage pattern for that specific add-in. And the data that we are exposing, so Microsoft collects the telemetry in the most compliant way, and then we are exposing this information on Partner Center, which has been approved by our compliance and legal team. So I just wanted to call that out. So that's pretty much from the demo side. Some of you might be aware of it, but for those, this is a great way to understand your product. So and then these are like some of the logistics. So again, like those who are not aware, so this is the documentation link where you can create an account in the Partner Center, and there are like a great set of information which you can go through at your time. This link talks about like how you can publish your solution to Microsoft App Stores via Partner Center. And the third link that I have is this is the usage. So basically whatever I was showing here in the demo. So you in this interface, you might be referring different terms and whatever I explained, and actually it's more documented in this reference. So you can see like how you can choose different filters and like what does it actually tell, and it explains all the different taxonomy in detail. Apart from usage, you can also see a tab called acquisition. So a lot of people they acquire your add-in. So sometimes add-in acquisition can happen through centralized deployment, meaning IT admin can deploy the add-in within their tenant, and sometimes the user themselves they acquire on their own. So both type of acquisition reflect in the acquisition tab. The look and feel is pretty much same as the usage, and you can understand your acquisition footprint as well. Our peer team takes care of exposing that data, and for that we have this documentation which you can go through and understand. So that's pretty much it from my side. I hope all of you will get a chance to edit, understand your application, and try to take actions accordingly to create more impact on our customers. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks, everyone. And if you have any questions in the chat window, I'll try to respond, even post-call. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. This is my email ID, and I'll be happy to help. Pretty much from my side. Yeah, thanks, David.
All right, thanks, Nisarg. That's great. So I'm going to talk about a new patterns and practices sample that we're about to release, which shows using web workers for Excel custom functions. Let's see, let me pull up. Let's start with, okay, so I just want to kind of walk through the scenario of what this sample is about. So here I've loaded up the sample, and you can see there's a task pane with a bouncing ball in it. So what can happen is if you have custom functions that run and they're running on the same thread as the task pane, if they're doing large calculations or taking a long time to do their work, they can actually end up blocking the UI. So as an example, if I run, we have all these little test methods that you can run. I'm going to run this one that tests on the UI thread, see what happens. I'm going to use this $A, $1 as our value will pass, and it does a bunch of math stuff on that. And then just to make it really intense, we'll copy this in, like a big table of values. And then you can see, like, as it's calculating all these, the bouncing ball stops while that's going on. And then each time we update, do some kind of recalculation, you'll see like it's interrupting the UI. So if you want to keep things responsive so that your UI is not getting stopped by calculations running in your custom functions, that would be a good space to use a web worker, and that's what these other functions are all showing. And they're a pattern of how you can run on a web worker. I'll just use the dtest one to show here, but you can also run a test that shows what happens if an error gets thrown, or you can run one that's using a promise. I'm going to show the code behind those in a second, but they're all running the same calculations. So let's use $A, $1, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I copy this across, and you can see as it's calculating, the bouncing ball is not stopping. So that's because we ran all those calculations on a separate thread. So let's go take a look at the code behind that, what's going on here. Bring this up. All right, so this is our project. We have our functions.js, which has the custom function code. And then this is functions worker, which is where the threads will run. Let's start with functions.js. And I'm going to go to the bottom and work my way up because this is the order of entry. So first, we want to associate all of our custom functions with their names so that Excel knows what JavaScript to call. So, if the user types in the test function, then Excel is going to call this function here. And you notice that each of them is just calling this dispatch calculation job, which basically is saying, let's go hand it off to the web worker. We're not going to do the actual math stuff here. We do the same thing for the test promise, the test error promise. They're all going to dispatch. The only one that's different is this one here, which is testing on the UI thread. This is the one that blocks because it runs, this intense loop with a whole bunch of math. None of this really means anything other than it's designed to take up a lot of time. And then we return the value. So this one will block, and these ones up here will not block. So let's see how dispatch calculation job works. We'll go up to that one. So it gets past the function name and its parameters. We have a global variable which tracks our job IDs, and it just continues to increment. So we get a unique ID for each job. And then we're going to return back to Excel a promise that we'll get back to later. And we'll have a function with a resolve and a reject. And what we want to do is just store that resolve reject. So we have this global job ID to promise info map, which just maps each job to a promise. And all we do is create a little JSON object that has our resolve function or reject function so that later when the web worker returns, we can go resolve or reject back to Excel. And we're going to call this helper method or helper function to get or create our web worker. Once we have our web worker, we're going to post a message to it, passing the job ID, the function name, and the parameters. And after that, it's off and running, and our UI thread is freed up. So last part of this stuff running on the task pane thread, we're going to have our get or create web worker. So let's see how that works. By the way, here's our globals at the top. So we've set our maximum web workers to 4. So we can have up to 4 threads running here. We're going to keep track of the web workers in this array, and our job ID global, and as well as our map, which starts off empty, where we keep track of all the promises for the jobs. All right, so when we get or create our web worker, we take a look at the job ID, and we're going to do a modulus operation on that to figure out which of the 4 threads to put it on. We then see if that web worker already exists in our array. If it does, we just return it, and we're done. If it doesn't exist, then we need to go create it. So we'll go down here and we'll say, let's create a new worker, and let's use our functions worker.js. So we're going to pass in this JavaScript here for that worker thread to be running that code on a different thread. Then we're going to add an event listener so that when a job gets completed and that worker thread posts back to us, we'll receive a function with the event information. And so we're going to pull the data out of that. And then from that data, we're going to parse it. I'm just kind of simplifying what's going on here. Parse that data down into a job result. And in that job result, we will have a job ID. And so that way we can go back to that promise map we had. We look up that job ID so we can pull out the reject or the resolve for it. And then we're going to actually, resolve back to Excel. So we check if there was an error, we go ahead and reject back to Excel, passing an error. If we had an answer, then we'll go ahead and resolve and we pass the result. So that would then you see the actual calculated result pop up in Excel. And then the last step is just to delete that job ID from our map because we're done. So that's how all the pieces work on our main thread. Now, if we go take a look at functions-worker.js, basically when it spins up, it's going to add an event listener for incoming jobs. When we receive one, and it gets posted to us, we're going to get an event. Once again, we want to pull out the data for that and then parse it. And there were 3 things in that job object. There was a job ID, which we're going to grab here. And there was also a name and parameters. So what we're going to do is say, all right, let's go invoke the function. And we're going to pass the name and the parameters so that we invoke the correct function because we had a test with an error, we had a test promise. So whichever one it is, we're going to invoke it. Now, after it's invoked and it comes back, we don't know, if we ran a test or a test with a promise. So we got to check what came back. We look at the result. And this whole thing is just checking to see if we have a promise. If we have a promise, we're going to then into it and then get our what we call the real result, which is the numerical value we want to send back. And then we'll post that message back to the main thread and we'll send it an object that has our job ID and that real result. If there was an error from that promise, then what we're going to do is basically post a message back with the job ID, but we're going to set our error to true so we know to return an error back to Excel. Now, if it wasn't if this invoke function did not return a promise, it just gave us a value, then we'll just post that result back. So we'll say post message, job ID, and that numerical result. And then there's a catch-all in case any kind of error occurred from our try-catch block. And in that case, we would also post back an error. So the invoke function, basically it gets the name, which could be test or test promise, test error, and the parameters. In each case, we're just mapping this string name to an actual function. So test goes to test promise goes to test promise. And in each case, we pass the parameters to it. And all those functions are down here at the bottom. The simplest one is the test itself, which just runs this lengthy math operation That takes up some time, depending on how large the value n is. If we call test promise, then we create a new promise that's going to resolve in about a second because it runs a set timeout. And then it just calls test, running the math, and then returns the value. So each time you see this in Excel, you'll see it takes about a second before it comes back. We can also run test error, which just throws an error, which we get sent back to Excel, or test an error with a promise. Now, the reason for these 4 different ways of doing this is these are scenarios you could counter on your thread. You know, like you might be running with a promise because you're making a network call. You might need to test how would you deal with an error that might pop up when you're doing your calculation. So that's why these are all here. They're like 4 little mini patterns that you can look at that you can reuse depending on the type of scenario you're running in your calculations with your web worker. So that's the gist of the code. One more thing to talk about here is that you'll notice in this left pane where I have this open, there's only like these JavaScript files or HTML file, some manifest files. There isn't an actual, like we didn't build this with YoOffice. This isn't running like a Webpack config file and all those extra little things you get with dependencies and the node modules folder. So we're trying a new approach with some samples on the PNP repo where we're trying to reduce some of the overhead, because if you have a YoOffice project, we have to maintain it. And every time there's some security update to one of the dependencies, we have to like run an NPM audit and update things. So what this is doing is we're just making a really simple static website. It's kind of gets back to in our docs, we'll talk about, an Office web add-in really is, it's a web page and JavaScript. And that's pretty much what you see here, and your manifest file. So the way this loads, like right now, I'm running this, I have a localhost server that I started up. So you'll see like all these are referring to localhost to load the functions, JS file, our JSON file, the home HTML. There's also, I should say online, I gotta fix that's a bug. So the online one you'll see is referring to GitHub. So what we're doing is we're publishing these files as GitHub pages. So, and this will be updated. This will point to the PNP repo. Testing assets is the repo where we originally, or Xiaofei actually put all this code together. He was putting it on the testing assets repo. So that's why this points there. But basically the manifest can just load directly from GitHub, which is pretty cool. It's like a clever way to not have to have your own server. And then what you do is you can load this manifest, you can sideload it into Excel, and it'll just go out to the GitHub pages and grab all these different assets and run. So you don't have to start up your own server. So we're hoping this will be a little simpler for people, so you don't have to deal with doing NPM builds and stuff like that. Hoping to get some feedback at some point once this is published to see how this is working out for folks. This is currently in a PR. Let's see, let me take you out to our site. Okay, so this is our PNP-Office add-ins repo, and we have this new web worker sample. So this is where the code is currently at. Hope to get this checked into master in the next day or two. But if you want, you can definitely go take a look at the code here. Let us know what you think, or post an issue if you have some feedback on it. And let's see, I think that pretty much covers it. So yeah, let us know what you think. Oh, one more thing to mention. So about a year ago, Lance Austin did a customer presentation. He was a guest presenter for us, and he actually created a repo. I just wanted to show you, this is kind of the inspiration for this. It was, I think, May of 2019. It looks like the May Office added community call. I will include a link to this repo because he was showing web workers at that time. He also had some other things in there about IndexedDB, WebSocket Service Worker. So in our blog post afterwards, I'll include a link to this if folks want to check that out. That's also a good source of information. All right, talk about Community Spotlight. So once again, thank you to Martin Van Stam, MVP, who's been helping us with issues and PRs on the PNP repo. Really appreciate the help. There's a link to his Twitter feed at the bottom there. And it'd be great to see other folks on this Community Spotlight as well. So I just want to remind folks, if you want to help out on open source and community, we have these different repos. We have our docs on Office.js docs PR, so you can go in and, fix something as small as a typo or offer larger fixes if you want. That's super helpful. There's also the PnP Office add-ins repo, as well as Office.js, where we track issues. If you can help out there, that's great. One thing to point out related to this, so in the PnP repo, I'm starting to add, we have these sample requests, which are labeled as good first issues help wanted. So if you want to jump in and do help out on open source, these are good ways to get started. They have descriptions in them of what to do. I'm also going to be adding some new requests here soon for, we need help recording demo videos for YouTube on a lot of these samples. So I'll be posting those here too if folks want to jump in on that. So I'm just trying to help people with more ideas of how to help on the community if you want. All right, so let's do some Q&A. These are some questions that came in on our Q&A form that we have. And so I check in with the various teams to try to get answers. There were 3 that we had this time. And the first one that's listed here, unfortunately, I don't have an answer yet from the team. I have a request out on that. So I'm going to have to post an answer in the blog summary that we post. Someone was asking what the expected timeline is for resolving add-in instability on the Android platform. There's a backlog issue. It's hard to see. It's blue on blue, but it's in the Office.js repo. There's an issue tracking this. The Outlook team was had put it on the backlog, but there's no timeline yet on when that will be addressed. So I have a question updated information in the blog summary. So, by the way, thanks for asking these questions. Appreciate it from folks. It helps us keep an eye on things and help out the community here. Next question was, there are 2 open entries on user voice asking for a solution to sending an email in Outlook Compose View using the Office.js API, specifically to handle Outlook on Windows cached mode, causing delays of more than 60 seconds in some cases when trying to use EWS or REST to send an email. Are there any plans or advice workarounds to help developers improve this scenario for end users? So we went out on user voice and tried to find these requests, and I think we're just getting lost in how many requests there are to try to find the specific ones. So the team asked if you can give us some links to those requests or more details about it. We'll definitely go take a look because this looks like a problem folks are having. It sort of sounds like an issue too. So we're thinking, you might want to post this to Stack Overflow and just tag it with Office.js or the Outlook-web-add-ins. And we can take a look at it there as well. We just need more information so we can help give a definitive answer. The last question was, with the deprecation of the Outlook REST API v2 to be decommissioned in November 2022, are there plans to provide a similar seamless usage API option in the add-in API? Seamless as in requires no user interaction, e.g. via pop-up to obtain a usable token client-side, as there is today with get callback token async. So talking with the Outlook team, they say that we recommend moving from the Outlook REST API to Microsoft Graph. And a good starting point would be to take a look at the SSO get access token async and use the Graph API. There's also some additional information in this document, this article, which I'll put the link to that article in the blog post. And so hopefully that helps. So now, moving along, if you're interested in presenting in an upcoming call, we have a form you can fill out and reach out to us. It's aka.ms/office-add-ins-engage. Just put some information about what you'd like to talk about and some contact info, and we will reach out to you and work to set something up. If you're new to Office add-ins, take a look at our documentation. There's an MS link here to office-add-ins-docs. There's also a lot of 5-minute quick starts. Depending on the host you're interested in, like Excel, OneNote, Outlook, and so on. We can get started with things. If you're looking to automate Excel tasks, you can also check out our Office scripts documentation at the aka.ms link to office-scripts-docs. And then we have additional developer resources as well. There's the Microsoft 365 Developer Program, which gives you a free tenant to develop and test your Office add-ins, which is a great way to get started, as well as just to continue your development efforts with Office add-ins. You can also take a look at Script Lab, which is a great way to try out some samples without having to set up a dev environment. We also have a link to our Office add-ins documentation and the custom functions documentation for Excel. If you want to engage with us, Best place to ask questions if you're running into any problems is to go to Stack Overflow and use one of these tags. There's Office-JS, Outlook-Web-Add-ins, Office-scripts. Also on GitHub, we have an Office.js repo, Office-JS, where you can go and basically let us know if you're seeing a bug. That's where we try to track product bugs. And then on User Voice, you can ask feature requests if you're looking for new things, or you can go upvote feature requests that others have proposed, which helps us for planning purposes. And finally, you can send a smile or a frown on Inside Office. This isn't the only community call. We have other ones as well on different technologies and platforms. So if you're interested in any of these areas, definitely go take a look at these calls and jump on. There's also a link at the bottom to aka.ms/M365 dev calls, which has a list of all the calls that we have every month. And then finally, just want to say thank you, everyone, for attending. We will post a recording of this to our YouTube developer channel in a few days. That's at the aka.ms/M365 dev YouTube link. You can also follow us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev. The next call will be coming up next year. Next year is here now, January 13th at 8 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So please join us. A new agenda, a new year, more stuff to go through. So once again, thank you, everyone, and we will see you on the next call.